Here at Canine Conversions, we host weekly mastermind with all our dog trainer clients. Tuesday we talk about marketing and Q&A, and Thursday we talk about sales. And what I want to do in this YouTube video is I want to share with you a recent mastermind that we had a lot of great feedback in, and I was like, you know what? Let me share it with you guys.
Yeah, boy.
And what we talked about was the importance of running paid ads, specifically Meta, Facebook, and why I love Facebook more than Google, and the amount of exposure that you get when it comes to running paid ads. And this is outside of just capturing the leads, because yes, of course, getting the lead is super important, but at the same time, it's like, how do you get a complete stranger that has no idea you exist to end up, investing money in your services, right? And it's all through the type of exposures that we're able to get, the type of engagements, and everything that happens whenever you start running paid ads. So, my name is Jorge Mateo. I am founder of Canine Conversions, the go-to agency to scaling your dog training business. I am here to get you more clients, increase your revenue, and also make an impact in your dog training business. All right, so if you're new to the channel, welcome, where we talk about, how to get more clients to your dog training business so you can make an impact in your community. And if you're already a subscriber, then welcome back to another banger. Hope you enjoyed this mastermind that we hosted, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Ciao. When it comes to running ads, it's more than just getting, leads. Okay. So what do I mean by that? Like whenever we start running ads, like yes, the whole objective of running ads is to capture name, email, and phone number, right? And when it comes to marketing, there's like reciprocity, right? What are we want to give them something, we want to give them something in return for the name, email, and phone number. In this case, what are we giving away?
A free transformation.
There we go. Exactly. A free transformation session, right? We're advertising for a free transformation session in return for the name, email, and phone number. That's reciprocity in marketing, right? But what happens is not everyone's gonna, anybody who, so whenever you're running the ads, not every single person is gonna look in the ad and just gonna become an opt, and it's gonna become a lead, right? There's a few things that could happen. What we want to happen is them become a lead. Number two is they're just going to get curious because, again, whenever you're running ads, you got to remember these people have absolutely no idea that you even exist, right? That's why we run ads, right? So we can bring the awareness that, yo, we have a business, this is what we do, and this is what we can help you and your dog do. Okay. So whenever it comes to running ads, when they first see your ad, they're going to get curious. They're going to be like, who is this Lynn person? Who's Canine OTC? Right? And what's going to happen is they're going to click on their socials, whether we're running on, Facebook page or Instagram page, they're going to click on the socials. So once they click on that, all right, they're going to look at the content, right? And I don't know about you guys, but there's been some times whenever I see an ad and I've never come across this, and I'm just like, let me look at the Instagram profile. And then like 10 minutes pass, and I'm just like scrolling because I'm like, yo, this is have good content, right? So what happens is I just bam, give them that follow because I'm like, all right, I'm busy. I can, I'll take a look at this later. So I just give them the follow so I can remember that they even existed, right? Who can tell me here why that's important and why that's still a win?
Because your content is going to come on their timeline again.
Exactly. Exactly.
Good job,
Because
Kenny.
just because, the way that Meta has been changing, because Meta, also formerly known as Facebook, it's always changing, right? The number one thing I tell a lot of people, it's like, at the end of the day, I'm always going to be a media buyer. I'm always going to run ads. Like I love the ads. I that's I I was looking at one of the account that we've spent over $2 million on the ads, and I was looking at all the past history of like, all the different types of strategies that we used to run and what we run now. And it's always changing, right? So I strongly do believe that as a media buyer, the best trait that you can have is to adapt to these, changes that happen inside Meta, you know, and we're always going through changes. And every 2 to 3 years, we go through like a massive change. One of the most recent changes has been the Andromeda update that you guys have, heard me talk about that. But it's like Meta's trying to make it as easy as possible. And they're like, we got to a point where we don't have to necessarily, run retargeting ads in order to retarget other people. So let me explain. Back in the day, if, or even now, if I want to target specific audience, meaning anybody who like I just want to target new followers, I can do that. If I want to target people who only watch like 95% of my video ad, I can do that. If I want to target people who, engage in sort of ads, then I can do that, right? Like those are the things that I have to manually do, right? But with the update, there has been some changes to where even if you engage on that, and even if you don't, if you engage on an ad or visit a profile, whatever you do, right? Even if you don't set up the ads as retargeting ads, you're still gonna the prospect is still gonna see the video ad. So it's kind of acting like a retargeting ad in a sense. So let's say, for example, Jack, you never heard of Canine Conversions and you looked at Canine Conversions and you didn't necessarily become a lead, but you looked at the social media profile and then you just exit out, right? If like I don't have to really do any retargeting ads just because you had made some sort of engagement, that means you're going to continue seeing my stuff. Like that's something that has been updating. So the reason why I say this is because, just because someone didn't convert as a lead in the very beginning doesn't mean it's a lost cause. It just means that it gets put into a pool of audience where you're just gonna get retargeted like a bunch of times. So like who here like sees, and I've tried to exclude, current clients, but like, or like clients, but who here to this day still see my ads like pop up on their social medias.
all the
All right,
time.
man.
All the
All the
time.
time, right?
Yeah, I
So it's
see
like
it
every
all the
time I
time.
I, I run like a test a new ad, it's like, I'm not necessarily doing a retargeting ad, retargeting all my clients, but because you have some sort of association with Canine Conversions, it's like you're constantly seeing my stuff, So like that's the beauty of it. Like your stuff is being put in front of people like multiple times, right? And not only that, so it's like I want to show you guys some stats. All right, because again,
Question.
yes.
So it's like a kind of like a forever? Is that what you're saying? Not a forever, but like indefinitely type of thing where it just
Yeah,
once there's engagement, it's you don't have to necessarily do a retargeting thing. It's automatically retargeting in a sense because you showed engagement or interest in that and going further
exactly.
than just seeing it.
It,
Is that what
it,
you
it,
mean?
it exactly. Yep.
Your
And
questions?
and the advantage that we have whenever we come to whenever we run local ads, it's like, it's a way smaller population compared to, running ads all over the US, or both US and or like Canada, for example, that I'm running right now, so that's the whole beauty of it. Now you can do exclusions, meaning, what, this person just became a lead. I just want to exclude those people. I don't want them to see my ad. That you can do that. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but I can do that. Like I can go and exclude every single client that I have, but I've gotten a few feedback in the past where like, no, please don't exclude me. I want to see the type of ads that you're running. So it's like, all right, cool. Like I'll do that. But you also do have the ability to exclude certain people. So it's like I have this client, not a trainer, but it's like, he's growing and scaling his business and we're running ads for looking for to hire people, right? Um, and he's like, I don't want anybody who's already applied to see my ad. I'm like, all right, cool, easy. Like we can just create an audience for people who already, applied, and we can exclude those. That's right. They don't have to see your ad every single time, and it just shows to new people, right? But what I'm trying to say is like whenever you're running local ads, it's gonna get to a point where people are gonna recognize you, like, yo, I've seen you on the ad, just because the population is like really small, right? And here, let me just share this account. I mean, let me share my screen. All right, can everyone see my screen here? Yes. All right, cool. So let me see. Was it delivery that I wanted to see? Okay, cool. So I'm gonna be looking at this campaign that we've been running since, end of November. All right. I'm looking at this campaign, right? Um, we have seen that thanks to the ads that we've been running. I'm not looking at leads, I'm not looking at conversion, I'm just looking at exposure right now. Who here knows what impressions is?
I
Anybody
think
know
so. I
all right,
think
well,
so.
what are impressions, Lynn?
Aren't impressions like if they like it, share it, or is that interactions?
That's engagement, that's interaction. What impressions are how many times Meta shows the ad in front of someone, in front of someone. All right. So this is why I love, running ads on social media because everyone is on social media, right? Like if you were to ask a random 10 people, hey, how many of you guys have a social, like how many do you guys have an Instagram or Facebook account? I'm pretty sure that 9 out of 10 people are going to raise their hand and say, I do. If you were to ask, the exact same people, like what's a tradition, like what's an old school way of advertising, like billboards or radios or,
Television.
yeah, like if you were to ask them how many of you guys are on that, like most likely, two or three people are going to probably raise their hand, right? So where are all the eyeballs at? They're on social media. So that's why I like doing that. It's like if I'm not logged off of Instagram, I find myself just like if I'm in a red light, in the car or driving, I'm just opening up Instagram. When I'm like have like 2 seconds or like, so it's like like all the eyeballs are on Instagram. So like this is why I love advertising there. But this is where I want you to see, right? Almost 500,000, and I'm not talking about leads, I'm not talking about conversions, but like this is the exposure that I'm talking about. It's like almost 500,000 people have seen this, trainers ads before. And that's the beauty
Okay.
of meta ads that like again, before you start running any ads, if it isn't for referrals, like people have absolutely no idea you exist. Like before I even started running Canine Conversions, people had no idea I existed, that we existed. So it's like once we start running ads, we see that, okay, we start bringing exposure of our business. So imagine that 500,000, right? So that's just impressions. If I'm looking at performance, let me look at engagements, all right? And then I'll look at leads and performances. But when I look at engagements, it's like, again, I'm just focusing on this one. All right, page engagement, 61, almost 62,000, engagements that we've had. On the post reactions, 2,600. Comments, 225.
Wow.
Saves, 300, yeah, like crazy, right? Post saves, 322. This is where the crazy part gets, right? Like it can either be a good thing or a bad thing, okay?
What's the
So
ad?
what's up?
What's the ad?
I'll show you guys the ad. It's an image and it's also a video. Um, But it's like the post, look how many people share the post. Like 641 people actually share the post, right? So when it comes to people sharing the post, it's like the reason why I'd say it's good is bad, good and bad. It's good because it's free marketing, it's free advertising. If I see an ad and I like it, and if I have like 1,000, friends on Facebook and I have like 10,000 followers on Instagram, or if I share it, I don't think you can share on Instagram, but let's say Facebook, let's say I have 1,000 friends and I share it,
11.
like a good portion of that is going to see the ad, right? It's only bad because since we're running local ads, if I live in Miami and I got people in California and I share an ad that is for Miami, people in California are not going to really relate to that. But it's like, again, eyeballs. Um, Sorry about that. All right, there has been 8,668 people who actually clicked on the ad. Okay. Show this. Let me put my phone on do not disturb mode 1 second. Um, okay, cool. So we have that, and then we have 89 people who like the Facebook page, and then Instagram followers, 567 people who have gained like who follow the page. Okay, who here can tell me why getting followers is so important on your social media?
It shows
Because
that
you
your
reach.
content is real. Oh, go for it.
Shows you're relevant. It shows you're relevant, shows you.
You reach the
Yep.
people that they're also in friends with on the page. Yes?
Yep. Exactly, right? You get the follower. I like to call like the followers that you get from ads, like, modern day email marketing, right? Like, yes, email marketing is still good. Capturing the name, email, phone number is still good because you can, email them almost every day. But it's like again, going back to where do you think people hang out the most? On emails or on social media? Most likely on social media, right? So here's a trick, right? Or this is why when it comes to running ads, I hit them from every angle. Again, the whole theme of this is it's more than just leads, okay? So we see that we have 587 people who, new followers, okay? Out of those, people, all right? All right, let me go back. Who here can tell me what do we do every time we get a new follower?
You're supposed to
Excited.
DM them.
Exactly. Exactly. You want to DM them, right? Something simple like, "Hey, I appreciate the follow." Is like, "What got you to follow?" You always want to end it with the question. Right? We call this tennis communication, right? And then, they'll tell you, "Oh, I have, I'm going through this, and this." Okay, cool. Step number two is like of course, you want to acknowledge what they tell you, but it's like the next step you want to figure out is like, okay, are they local or are they not? You know, because if they're local, you can help them out, right? If they're not local, because the ad was shared, which is a good thing. Sometimes like if you have a killer ad, it can be a good and bad. It is good because it's producing leads and it's producing, clients, but it's bad because now you're getting, followers or even leads from people outside of your area. It's a good problem to have. There's good and bad problems. I call that a good problem to have. That means the ad is good, right? So you want to make sure that they're actually in your local area. If they're not, I would honestly just end the conversation like, "Oh, that is so cool. You know what? If it's like appreciate the follow. If you need anything, just let me know." Something like that. Like I wouldn't really you can't unless you have something online, like you can't really help them out, So this is why it's important to figure out where they're at, where they're located. If they're local, what do we do?
Ask them about their dog.
Exactly. We want to fact find a little bit. We want to fact find a little bit more. We want to see exactly, like what kind of problems they have, and then we want to offer them a free transformation session, right? So here's like the crazy part about all this, right? People do convert, even if you hit them up from a follow. Like this is something that a lot of people don't do, but people still convert. So if let's say for example, this is me being like super, super, conservative, but like we have 567 followers, right? Even if you convert 1% of that, what's 1% of that? Like 5.67, right? Like let's just run it up to six. Like six, like if you can convert 1% of this into clients, like that still makes up, you can make a lot of money. So, all right, here, what's an average price point that you guys, charge?
Me?
Anybody? Anybody?
Average is probably 2,200.
2,200, all right?
800 bucks.
So 2,200, all right, and if we converted 1%, being super conservative, and I'm just gonna round up to six, that's $13,200 that you could have possibly made. Okay? So now let's go back to see what have this person, how much have we invested on ads? Let me share it again. So we see that we invested, because we're only looking at this, 8,364 since we've launched this campaign. And you're telling me that without even including the leads, without even hitting up the leads that we actually, just the followers that we get, you're already profitable. So it's like, yo, I'm gonna do everything in my power to like, reach out to every single person. Because now what happens is like the ads are pretty much paying for themselves. You know, when we did the math, it was, 13,200, and the total ad spend of this particular campaign is like 13,000. And I can tell you that this particular client last month made like I think like 60 something thousand in 1 month. Again, this is only looking at, everything that is in the lead, right? So now imagine the type of results that you can get if you actually, call the leads, you do the follow-up, so it's like this is why it's like for me, it's like we have gone 1,520 leads at $5.50 a lead. Only 8,000, I invested 8,364. The best month that this person had was like 70, I think like 72,000 in a single month. Right. But it's because it's all about the system, it's all about the follow-up, and also it's all about like what you do. So it's like for me personally, I have gotten clients simply but just acknowledging and thanking them for becoming a follower. I actually do try and give value on not only on my Instagram, but like even on my YouTube channel. It's like I made a committed decision where I'm posting once a week and providing value. And again, just leading with service, trying to help as many people as I can. So it's like that's why for me personally, it's like I no matter what, it's like I still try to hit up people. Like we get to a point where like even if someone comments, it's like, we will if it's a good comment, right? Like we'll acknowledge it and then we'll try to get him off the comments, get him into DMs, and then once we're getting him into DMs, having a conversation, if they're kind of qualified, then we'll get him into a phone call. So like the whole point that I'm trying to say here is like whenever we're running ads, it's more than just, getting the leads, you know? Like it's more than like if you're not getting enough leads, it doesn't mean that it's a loss. It means that, you're building your online ecosystem. It means that, every time someone logs in, they're going to see your content, you're going to see your face every single time. And whenever it comes to like, if they become a follower, it's like the reason why that's a win for me is because, you know, not everyone's ready to buy like at that time. You know, you guys hear me talk about this guy named Dan Kennedy. Dan Kennedy's like the OG of like marketing. He said that there's three types of people in the market. Who can tell me here who are these three types of people in the market?
People who are ready to buy, people who are just shopping around. I don't know the actual names for them.
No, no,
And
you're good. You're good. Exactly.
the
It's exactly
people that
that.
are skeptical or whatever.
Yeah, so there's people who will never ever buy from you. And you know what? That's
There you
okay.
go.
There's the people that they're never gonna buy from me. And you know what? That is okay. I'm not gonna focus on that, right? The smallest group of people are people who are in the most amount of pain and they're ready to buy at the spot. Like those are the smallest group of people. Let's say, for example, the dog just jumped on grandma fell, she broke her hip, and like either we fix the dog's behavior or the dog has to go to the shelter. Like that owner is in a huge amount of pain. Those are like the smallest group. The biggest group of people are people who are kind of looking around, but not in that much pain. But, you know, that's why we require a system that converts those people into actual buyers, you know? So that's why, when it comes to like sometimes people want to focus so much on the smallest amount of person that, we miss on the biggest amount of people. Right. So like let's say for example, when I decided to buy myself a one-way ticket from California to Miami, it's like all I packed was one suitcase and that's it. I needed to buy a sofa, I needed to buy a bed, I needed to buy a desk. Like all I did was just my laptop and a suitcase, one-way ticket. I'm like, let me try this out for a year, right? Before I even moved, it was like I was shopping around. It's like, oh, how much do beds cost? Where can I buy a bed? It's like, do I need it right there, right there at the spot? No, because I was still in California, right? But I was in the market of shopping because I knew that's something that we needed. So that's the same thing when it comes to like followers. It's like, it's good to be in front of their face because not everyone's going to be ready to buy, but when they are, instead of them going to Google and type in best dog, nearest dog trainer near me or, best dog trainer near me, who do you think is going to be on top of their head? Who do you think they're going to think of if you're constantly posting on social media? Once you get that follower, it's going to be you, right? So it's like that's why for me personally, like what it's like if when I'm on social media and I look at this, cool place, that like a restaurant that it just came across with, it's like I'm not I may not necessarily be ready to buy or go to that restaurant right there at the spot, but I will give them that follow. That way they're on my feed. And whenever it's day night with me and my wife, for example, we're like, yo, what's a new place that we want to go to? It's like I've already seen their food so many times that I'm gonna think of them rather than going to Google and trying to find something else. So it's equivalent to that. So that's why, I haven't even, I'm not even talking about the leads. I'm not even talking about, like, the way we handle the leads. I'm just talking about that, everything that happens outside of the leads.